Newsline TV. The guest of today, you know him, it's William, the pilot, an engineer also. But before that, you see we have been joined by another lady in the house, my co-host. I will let her introduce herself and tell us where she was because when we were starting the show, she was not here. So welcome.
So my names are Emma Sams, and I'm going to be a co-host for life probably. Okay, so in regards to me arriving late, you know I'm a lady.
Yeah.
A lady who takes time. So yeah, I think that sums it up.
Okay, we have a guest here with William. It's a pilot. I want you to ask him any question because we had already started the conversation. Now it's your turn.
Well, it's nice to meet you, William.
Thank you.
I hope he's given you the reception you deserve.
Yes.
Yes. So here I come bearing questions, which I hope you won't take any offense to.
Please go ahead.
So, what do you think can be done in the Kenyan education system that would make children more interested in education more than getting the papers?
What I've just been saying a lot of times here is that we, as Kenyans, we have what we call the colonial mentality that was imposed to us by the British, and it's still there today. So the British system was a system that was based on class system. By class system, I mean because they had the class system, the royals and the commoners. So it's a long history of what has happened, and in the Kenyan context, we still have it today. But nevertheless, we had the 763 system, we had the 844 system, and now we have the CBC, which is an improvement of the colonial system where we tell the student it's a pass or a fail. So in my viewpoint, the Kenyan system has improved. We just need to work on the current system to make it better so that we look at your talent and what you are passionate about, and then we encourage you in that. So if you're a musician, you become a musician. If you're an artist or an engineer, whatever you are, you just go on your line, which is a good thing, and I'm happy about it. You just have to implement the system, in my viewpoint, in a good way. Yeah. So it's improving.
So do you think it's the same level as IGCSE, or we are heading there or getting there?
You see, one of the things about the systems of education, in my viewpoint, is that when the British came here to Kenya, they introduced the education in Kenya. They had what you'd call a grammar school and basic school. Now, the royals are the ones who came to Kenya, and the royals came up with the grammar school. In grammar school, like they had the Royal University College, or now it's called the University of Nairobi, where you did a degree in philosophy, a degree in anthropology, a degree in that. So in Kenya, we look at the first group of people like, Tom Mboya, guys like even the current governor, what is he called? This guy of Orengo, James Orengo. These are guys from the University of Nairobi who are thinkers, who are philosophers. So you find the political climate in Kenya is the way it is because of our education system was British. It was an education system of thinkers, of politicians. So that education system is what has made us different from Uganda and Tanzania in terms of that this is education for thinkers. So when the British came here, because they were the colonizers of the world, they colonized the whole world, they had to know how to make you a thinker, a superior being, so that you could now go and rule the whole world. Don't forget the British Empire is the largest and covered the whole of the world at one time.
Yeah.
So the British coming into Kenya, and they have that education system because it was the royal family that came in here. But when you look at Zimbabwe, which the basic, it was called the basic school. Then the basic was to learn woodwork, carpentry, metalwork, because you are the, into quotes, the commoner. You're not supposed to be a thinker. So you just do manual jobs and then let the thinker think. So what happens in Kenya now, we separate these systems because that's how the British were. It's a class system. So these guys now become the managers and the politicians. So management is different. Now you are the person doing the woodwork, and then this manager now can be able to rule over you. So that was the concept that was there, that is still in the system. Even when you come to the Air Force and the Armed Forces, we have what you call the officers' mess. So you can go in as an officer and you can go in as a serviceman. All this goes back to the British system. So when I'm going in as an officer, I'm going there to be given the knowledge on managing a platoon or a battalion. But then when I go there as a serviceman, I'm just taught how to take orders. So it's the same thing that we had in the first in many years. And 844 was trying to address that problem in making workers, people who could do carpentry and all that. But we still not come out of that education system. So I was telling my friends, we are still colonial. We don't know how to get out of it. It's like a curse. And I still see it that way. And I still see it that way, that we still want to be now to the hustlers and they are the rulers. That's what even the Gen Z movement is about. We cannot be having hustlers and the ruling class. And it's a system that has been ingrained since 1900. So it's how to get out of that we can now have everybody at par, because that's what the Gen Z movement is about. We have to have everybody, because we can't have guys who are royals and then other guys who are, but it's still there. Unfortunately, I don't know. I can tell you, Emma.
In that question of education, imagine you are made a cabinet secretary today of education. What system would you change in the education which makes every child, anyone who wants to become a pilot can?
About piloting, I'll come to that, because piloting is not supposed to be, what is what I'm looking for? This is what I can say about piloting. In the 1970s, piloting was cheap because fuel was cheap. So after 1973, piloting becomes expensive because the fuel becomes expensive. So when you get to 1918 at Wilson Airport, any doctor or engineer would go there, apply for flying and fly. So we don't have that because the fuel has become expensive. So flying is easy, by the way. It's just that it's expensive. But flying is easy. Now, how can we make flying cheaper or accessible to the masses? So there are things like gliders, there are things like ultralights, there are other aircrafts that don't require fuel. There are electric planes coming up. But what the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority has not done is to allow that accessibility by the law. So we have got a group on WhatsApp called Home Builders. And these guys called Home Builders, it's got about 300 people. I would like you guys to join in and you see what is happening in that Home Builders. There are guys who build their aeroplane for 2-3 million Kenya shillings and then get PPL and fly their own aeroplanes. So Home Builders, when we formed it with my friends, it was to address the issue that to make flying accessible to the masses in Kenya, to make sure that any Tom, Dick or Harry can fly. Okay, I'm not saying the poorest of the poor will fly, but from the middle class at least, upwards, can own an aeroplane and fly it. So if you've got 2-3 million Kenya shillings, we can give you a plan, you build the aeroplane, and then later on help you go through Civil Aviation Authority, acquire a license, and then you fly your plane. And then it will cost you about 10,000-15,000 Kenya shillings to fly the plane. So it is possible. And we are in the progress of doing that. We shall have small events, but it's a niche club, so I don't know if we shall be able to, get people. So there are people who are students, and we have allowed everybody to come in because flying actually is meant for the rich, according to the colonial system that was put there. But now we want to break away from that and say, let's have everybody. We can't have everybody as such, but if you can afford a Range Rover, then you can afford an aeroplane. If you can afford a Mercedes or Audi, you can afford to have your own aeroplane and fly for fun. Because we cannot employ all those pilots.
Yeah.
So at least you have your own aeroplane at Wilson, at Mombasa, and I will say, hey, I want to go and see my friend in Kisumu. I enter my aeroplane, fly to Kisumu, see my friend. In the evening, I make it back in Nairobi or in Mombasa again. I go back to my normal family. It is done abroad. It's done in Germany, in the UK, in America. And, well, it can be done in Kenya. Why not, Emma?
Yeah, sure.
Why should we put ourselves short? But we have got, if you want, I'll give you give me your names and then I can put you in that WhatsApp group. Okay. So you see people now talking about building aeroplanes and they are Kenyans. So we are in the progress of going towards that, yeah.
Apart from your career life, I'm sure you also have a personal life.
Yes, I do.
What advice or what word may you give someone who's like any young guy coming up? Do you think they should be in a relationship or they should just focus on their career, build everything, then come back?
You know, it's a good question you've asked, and I have a very foolish way of talking about it. And I'll explain why. You see, the major problem, I tell people, first and foremost, I don't want to praise the African culture as such, but I liked the African culture because I'm not saying even the Westerners were that way, even the Mzungu was that way. So one of the things that we have a problem is relationships. We don't talk about relationships. So we concentrated so much on education, we forgot to talk about social education. So you find people like the Waswahilis still have social education in them. So one of the things that I would like to encourage before we even talk about relationships is how do we have social education in the school, but above all in the family, so that the father can be able to advise the son, the mother can be able to advise the daughter. We don't have that. So one of the things that I would like we have is social education, like we had in our African culture, that is passed down to your children, and your children can pass down to the other children. That is number one, that we should have to whatever. And secondly, I would like to say this way: if you're a young man, you know, there's this concept of love that everybody talks about, and I always tell these people this way, and maybe you might disagree with me. Marriage is a duty. Marriage is not about love only. So love is a duty, marriage is a duty, and then love comes number two. That is the advice I can give. It's a duty.
You have said a very correct slogan. Marriage is a duty. It's not about love.
Yes,
Can you go further and explain to us the duty of this marriage?
You see, I'll just say something else. And I'll say something, another controversial thing here.
Yeah.
Sex is not for pleasure. Sex is for reproduction. Full stop.
Wow.
So people get the concept wrong, and that's now because you're talking about advising young people.
Yeah.
So if you find the older African man, okay, I'm now in Africa, I'm now in the old ages, people would select a wife for me. I would not go and select a wife. Because I'm sorry to say, as a man, she'll con me. Because I'm looking at her outside, I'm not looking at her inside. And as men, it's easy for me to not see her inside.
You just go by outside.
Her outside looks nice, and I'm not saying her inside could look nice, isn't it? But as a man, men cannot see the inside. Men only see the outside. So now I need an advice from an old man or an old grandmother. He says that one, because she can see. So women would be able to see her than me. So when parents used to select a bride for you, they would select for a bride for you with a good reason, because they know you are blind. You're a young man, you can't see anything. But they have got 20, 30 years of experience. They know ile ni familia warogi. Ile familia, they all know all that. So how can you go and marry a family with witchcraft? If you're a girl, how can you go and marry a family full of drunkards? So now, because you'll not be able, I can also be able to con you. So it is good that the parents were there to give advice. So now the problem is that when I go to select a girl or vice versa for her to select someone, it's hard for her to see. Not in a bad way. You don't have experience. You only get the experience when you get to your 40s. And then you discovered, guy, I made a mistake. And then now you divorce because now you realize your mistake. And it's a bit too late. You've got 4 or 5 children. But if you had got those eyes on your 40, 50, you're able to see, but you don't have them. So let your parents advise you. And then now you come now to, let's say, matters, because now the matters with sex and all that stuff. The major problem is the media. If I was to tell you about the Kikuyu culture, maybe I don't know about other cultures. When is the first time you drank beer? You could only drink beer when you got married. It's the Kikuyu culture. Okay, I don't know about other cultures. Wow. You could only drink beer. The day you're getting married is the first beer you'd take. But let me reverse it. For you to get married, you needed to pay dowry. How do you get dowry? You needed to work. to pay dowry. So then I have to reverse it, you have to work. So let me say this way, you have to work to get dowry. Then when you get dowry, you get married. Then you can taste beer and you can have sex for the first time.
Mm-hmm. There are formalities you have to fulfill first.
Yes, you couldn't have sex just like that. You have first to go through work, get cows, build a home as a man. Then they come to your parents. They don't want any shit. They want to know, have you built a house? Yes. Let's go and see the house. And I'm sure, I'm not so much good with other cultures, but the Luo culture, the Kamba culture was more the same. So I can't just come and marry you. Are you working? Yes. Do you have a house? Yes. Do you have a business? Cattle and goats? Yes, he has a business. Then the parents talk. I think this young man can marry our daughter. Akona hakili. He has got brains. So if you're asking me what advice to give the young men, let them look at the young men in those years. You have to work. You have a house. You have a business. Then get married. Then have sex or drink at that time. But now, if you are drinking before that or having sex before that, then I can say it's unfortunate. Because you're not, those are the rules, and that's how that marriage now lasts. There was no divorce. I don't even know. It's a foolish way or in a right way.
Yeah.
But I'm saying the culture at that time is what strengthened marriage. But the culture we have today, because of the media influences, I can't tell a young man to do that. But that is what any woman would want. Mtu anafanya job, mtu akona nyumba yake, mtu anajijua pale anaenda, utaki kuingia pale kwa mwanaume ajui ana mpango
mbele wala nyuma.
Isn't it? Any lady anataka asema hiyo ako na nyumba yake, enda huko. So that is a major problem with any young man. And by the way, sorry, not in a bad way, it has nothing to do with love. Because in those old days, you never married for love. You married for procreation. Full stop. So the concept is, how did love come about?
Wow. That's a challenge you've given me. I think I'll do more research on it. So another question to follow up on the previous one. A lot of guys these days, mostly let me say Gen Zs, and also some millennials, they prefer having a 50-50 relationship with us females.
So you're contributing half for the house and he's contributing half.
Yes. So there are those who are doing that, let's say before marriage, and there are also those who are doing that within the marriage vicinity. So do you think that's right? Do you support it?
Let me ask you something. I don't like going against the rules of nature.
Okay.
I always tell people, a man gives, a woman receives. So let me start this way, and I'll be a bit even dirty. A woman's work, in fact, let me say something. A woman does not know how to love. She's not even supposed to love at all. Never ever expect a woman to love you. She doesn't have the capacity. Who said she has the capacity?
She should not love.
She should only receive love, but she cannot love. Who said she can love? She doesn't know. She only knows how to receive love. So she receives everything. She receives the dick. She receives the spouse. She receives the love. She receives money. Her work is to receive.
Only receive.
Yes, your work is to give. So if you go against the laws of nature, then what do you expect? Things will not work.
Sure.
So it is impossible for her to give. She was not made to give. In fact, the Bible says, love your wife. Your wife is just supposed to submit. She's just supposed to receive the love. It's not even there, it's in the Bible. It's even in the African tradition. It was, a woman was, her work was to receive. Everybody knows that. Why are we bringing some other policies?
Or 50-50.
Hakuna 50-50. Hakuna, it's not there.
Yeah.
Her work is only
to receive.
Yeah, and even biologically, it's what she does. So are you going to say that you give? She receives the dick, she receives the spouse, she receives the love, she receives the money.
Yeah, everything.
Everything.
I want just to sit down and relax. Okay.
Full stop. So the Gen Z are wrong at 50-50. That's out. And by the way, if you ever, as a young man, just let the woman just say, if she accepts your love, fine. If she doesn't accept it, leave her. So her work is to accept or reject your love, but she cannot love you. You're the one to chase her. You're the one to date her, to push everything. You're the one push, not her. Her work is just to say yes or no. I don't want your stories, go. Then you go. That's her only work. Or she says yes. But not,
Just to accept it now.
no, she can accept whatever she wants to accept. But don't expect her to give. I'm just saying, expect her just to receive. So she can only receive your love or reject your love. But don't expect her to give love. So men get frustrated because they are giving and they're not receiving the love. So just give, so long as she has received, be happy. If you give that one love, fine. If he doesn't receive, fine. But no, she can't give you back.
But you know, when you come to that, there are those men who don't know how to give.
Then it's unfortunate.
No, they have to be approached by a lady. She say, I love you, I do what?
It's unfortunate. Your work as a man is to give.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You're the source. You're the source.
Sure.
There is no way out. You know, I'm saying biologically. Me, I'm not talking about even when the animal kingdom.
Yes.
You're not talking about even human beings, even in the animal kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
The woman is, the female is just to receive. That is it. Or submit. They use all these words.
Sure.
But I don't expect that you come here and he starts. You're the one to lead. You're the one to say you're going this way or this way.
Not her.
Not her. Okay, guys argue about that, but I have my reasons. Because again, they say the relationship that you will, maybe I'm a bit traditional. People say that the woman can give her viewpoints and all that. I am not saying she can't. But the decision, the last decision has to be the man in a relationship. Outside that is different.
Now, back to that concept of marriage and whatever. Now you are a pilot. I know pilots are the most committed people because every time you are in the country, you are out the country, you are flying, and you have your family. How do they balance the life, their family life and their career life?
Unfortunately, and I'll be very honest, most pilots unfortunately are womanizers. That's one. Let's just get that out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they're with their wives, they're not the best reputation. But generally, I'm not saying all the time. What you should ask yourself rather is, who are the people who end up as pilots? What is the psychology behind a typical pilot? That's what you should ask. So you should ask yourself, what makes a good pilot? And I'll tell you one of the things that if you're going for an interview for a pilot, we want a guy who is very lazy. So they're going to drag your feet as you're coming to the interview. Most of the pilots, what we look for is a lazy person. But generally, the psychology of a pilot is a small boy who doesn't really grow up. Generally, I'm not saying all the time. So he starts off playing with a toy car, he graduates to a bicycle, he graduates to a motorbike, and then graduates to the aeroplane. So to him, that aeroplane is a toy. It's not really, he takes it as a toy.
It's not a big deal.
It's not a big deal. So he's playing, having fun with that. And when he comes into a relationship, like now if you have to look at how a pilot looks at a relationship and how vis-a-vis a lawyer would look at a relationship are two different people. So when you look at a lawyer is in a suit, he's very formal. If you go to his office, you'll see his wife's photo there. You'll see his children, usually in a lawyer's office. He's usually a member or the chairman of a church or the chairman in the estate. That's a typical lawyer, which is not what you get with a pilot. So a pilot still finds himself, so a lawyer wants to be mature and be a husband and be a man. But a pilot would still feel himself as a man who is still on the dating scene. He really wants to be, cool and all that stuff. So the way they look at relationship is very different. They want their wives to be, still sexy and all that. They still want to be, young. They live young and all that. The typical, I'm not saying all pilots, these are generalizations, so don't get on me. So the typical pilot is that way. And many of them, even because also the second thing that affects them is that when you go 2 weeks outside and 2 weeks back here, you end up also messing up because when you're on the other side, you mess up there. When you come back here, you've got a little bit of more money and you also mess up. So they mess up as in you're promiscuous, to say the least. So, but not all. There's some pilots who are faithful, got wives, they can go on. But let's say 60% or so really don't have the best reputation when it comes to women. I'm not saying in a bad way, but that's the case.
But you should have said at least 20%. Why 60%?
Yeah. You know, it's just, okay, for me, maybe it's because of the pilot friends I knew, but maybe they've changed, maybe they're better, but they don't have the best reputation. Maybe I'm one of them, but with a bad reputation. But I'm just saying, because I'd like being honest in interviews and in this podcast.
Yeah.
I can just say that many of them are, well, not the best, but they live a high life. So pilots are not people who save money. They buy the best Mercedes. They like fast cars. So you find that a pilot, when they're buying cars, they are Subarus, Audi, so they buy the best sports car ever. So pilots, one of the things you spend his money on, sunglasses, his looks, the car. So if you ask me, they look rich, but they're not that really rich. They're middle class. But they're very flashy and flamboyant and very cool. And that's why maybe they get a bit of girls here and there. Yeah. Okay, I don't have that flashy car, but it's a story for another day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So during the experience you've had, before you mentioned you did piloting first, and now you're doing teaching, right? So what made you transition instead of pursuing further?
I didn't really want to transition. I just wanted to remain a pilot, but I ran short of funds. That's one, to convert my license. And secondly, I also had a problem with the very few jobs. The thing in Kenya is that the jobs for piloting are really very few. And many people have left Kenya Airways, some friends I know and all that, and they have left the airline and just lack a job. So the jobs in Kenya are not as many because Kenya Airways only has now 44 aeroplanes, and about 40 to 44, and about one aeroplane employs 6 pilots. So if you do the arithmetic, it's about 250 pilots. So unless Kenya Airways expands, because Kenya Airways is the main employer of pilots, then you don't find many jobs. So many pilots are employed outside Kenya. So the pilots we have are in Somalia, Tanzania, etc. So if you ask me honestly, there are very few piloting jobs. So you end up looking for a job and lacking a job, and you just have to do something else.
So it's not like the way we are told, like a typical parent would tell you, go to school, find a career within certain lines. You believe you'll find a lot of money in that career lane. Pursue it, you'll get the job in front. So there are other dynamics before all that.
There are a lot of dynamics. For instance, a pilot can earn 700,000 Kenya shillings. If you go to Dubai, they're earning 3 million Kenya shillings per month. These are facts. But now to get that position, there are so many guys who, because it was a very lucrative career, so many people flooded the market. Unfortunately, Kenya Airways did not expand. And one of the concepts we get wrong with the airlines, in fact, I'll ask you a question. Are airlines supposed to make profits? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll tell you no. Many airlines make losses. Even Qatar is one of them. But what we do, but now it's making a little profit. What you do is that you make losses on the airline, but make profits in tourism. So if you look at the tourism in Kenya, we only have about 2.2 million tourists per year. But if you go to places like South Africa, which South African Airlines has been making a loss since 2020, what is the number of tourism per year in South Africa? 12 million. So we make profits on the tourism, but make losses on the airlines. That's a concept Kenya doesn't have, because Kenya is still insisting KQ has to have profit. So how much is it to go to Dubai? 60K. If you go there, you can do shopping and come back. So you have the concept of making the ticket cheap, and so cheap so that people can go to your country, do business and tour, and make your money there with their taxes. And this tax supports the airline. But the concept of Kenya Airways making profit for me does not make sense. Now we have got a fleet of about 44. What is a fleet for Qatar? 400. What is a fleet at South Africa? 120. Check your Google. So these guys make losses in the airline. But when you're hearing the tourists that are there, they're talking about 15 million, Spain 20 million, Kenya 2.2 max ever. Usually are at 1.8 million. So how do we improve on tourism unless we make the airline make losses? And we're making that make losses, we'll get more pilots and more people in the tourism sector. More business in the tourism sector. Because now we'll have more hotels and more money. Then we tax that to pay for the airline that is making a loss.
Yeah, sure. There is sense there.
I think that's what I'll do. It was we talked about Ministry of Education and digressed. That is Ministry of Transport. If it's Ministry of Education, you have the concept of you don't read to pass, you read to get knowledge. That is the concept. We get away from the colonial mentality.
But where are you going to use the knowledge?
Let me ask a question. A very interesting question. What one priest told me, William, you'd rather rule a country with people with knowledge than rule a country with people with no knowledge. So I was told that when people have knowledge, they are wise, they are much more easier to rule, and they are easier to govern because they have wisdom. So there is no way you can tell me that knowledge is bad. Either way, it will help you. So I was told that once you get knowledge, somehow, some way you use it. You don't know how, but you'll use it. And you use that knowledge for the benefit of mankind, and above all, you make money. It is impossible to have knowledge and not make money. You must make money. Whether you have a certificate or not, you make money. So just get knowledge, and somehow you get money. And also you live a better life. You'll not be having many stresses in life because you know it will work out that way, it will work out that way. Just get the knowledge and go on. You don't have to worry about whether you get a certificate or not.
So what if you skip these stages? Instead of getting the education first, you target the money. Then you say, I don't need to think. I will hire people to think for me.
There's something that is important here, and this is what we used to say. The guys of D minus are the ones who employ the guys of A plus, which is true. The guys who are having C minuses and C whatever are our rulers, isn't it? Those guys have knowledge. They still have, yes, it's they call it being streetwise. So that streetwise is knowledge. And because that knowledge, he's able to employ someone who has that A plus. So you're right, and I'm agreeing with you. But now it is street knowledge that you've got the street knowledge that is helping you now employ someone with an A plus. But it's still knowledge. You can be able to analyze situations. But you have that wisdom, you have that acumen of being able to know it's called social education. That's why I'm saying we are so much on academic education. We forget the social education. So what those guys have got is social education. They still have the knowledge, but they don't have they didn't go to class, they didn't go to do an exam, but he learned it on the streets. He was in bed thinking of what he did wrong that day. He corrects it the next day. He becomes better. And before you know it, he's an MP, member of parliament, or he's a great businessman. So what we think of is academic education, it quotes as education, but we don't have social education as education, but it is.
So knowledge is not constricted. It's not constricted to school alone.
Yes, you see, in my viewpoint, when you look at knowledge, there's knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. Knowledge is the data. Understanding is doing it practically. And wisdom is doing it for God. So we get knowledge in school and it stops there. We don't make it practical. For example, I know how to make water. So I can now make drinking bottled water. So we just know that and then we look for a job. I have the knowledge, but I look for a job on that. I don't do the other piece, to bottle the water or to make sparkling water. And then I don't do it for the good of mankind, to make sure he's not thirsty. I make sure there's water in Northeastern. So we don't have that transition of we just stay at knowledge and don't move on. So you can have the knowledge, yes, but you don't make it practical. You have to, make it
Yeah.
usable, yes.
If I ask you, what is that one thing which people don't realize about pilots?
It's something that I'll tell you a story.
Yeah.
When I was in Congo, there's a pilot and all that. I realized a pilot was almost like a small god. You are almost like a small god and all that. But when you get to a country like South Africa, a pilot is a normal person because there's so many pilots in South Africa. So when you look at a country's economy, like South African economy is a very strong economy. When you look at countries that have very strong economies, a pilot is a normal person. Because in South Africa at that time, there were about 13 to 15,000 pilots, people who had aeroplanes, their own aeroplanes. But in Congo, today, we don't have more than 50 aeroplanes in Congo. The country is the size of Western Europe. I think they've got about not more than 50. And if you're told, say 50 times 3, that's 150 or 200 pilots in a country of a population of 90 million, then a pilot, into quotes, is a small god because there are very few and they are well paid. So you find that that concept of a pilot is not, to me, a big deal, depending on the country you are in. So if you're in a country that is well developed and it's rich, you're a normal person. But unfortunately, if you're in a third world country, then you are, into quotes, a big person. And that is a concept I would like to remove from these people, that. I was even hoping to do a piloting course in Kiswahili. I wanted to do that, to make it accessible to people. I'd even do one in Sheng, even one in Kikuyu, to show that it is not hard to fly. It's not a big deal to be a pilot, because when you go to driving school, you can do it in Kiswahili, by the way. In fact, driving school is supposed to have anybody drive a car. You don't have to go to school to drive a car. So that's why they have those signs. So even if you can't read, that is a stop sign.
Yeah.
So driving school was made for that you can be illiterate, but does not mean you cannot drive a car. I don't know if you've known that you can be literate and drive.
You can be literate and drive.
Yes, you can be literate and drive a car.
It sounds tricky.
It's there. That's what driving school is meant. What's the difference between a license and a degree? Let me throw that to you. What's a license and what's a degree? Because you get applied license. And it's a degree. It's not a degree. You get applied license. What's the difference between a license and a degree?
There's a lot of difference.
A license is under the Ministry of Transport. A degree is under the Ministry of Education. A license is practical. A degree is theory. Now, the Ministry of Transport cannot issue a degree by law in any country. The Ministry of Transport can only issue a license. So a license is practical. It's use your hands, use skill. But a degree is theory. It's knowledge here. It's written. So now you have what you call a complex skill, and you have something called a simple skill. Example, walking is a skill. But it's so easy that we cannot give you a license for it. Riding a bicycle is a skill.
Yeah.
But because a child who is 2 years can ride a bicycle, why should you give you a license for that bicycle? But a motorbike is a complex machine. So it's a complex task to ride the bike. So when you get to a complex task, then we have to give you a license for a complex task. If the task is complex, then we have to give you a license to it. But if it's a simple task, we don't need to have a license. Now, what we are trying to do with aviation is to make sure that it is easy. So we are automating our aviation as we go on. So you find that if you go on the internet, they say this aeroplane does not require a license because it's fully automated. Even a simple person can fly it. So we are going towards that level where we're going to fully automate the aeroplane, where you don't require a pilot's license to fly because it's a simple skill. So we're going towards that. And at the moment, don't worry, and I can explain it, I don't know how to explain it. Flying was not like it was in the 60s because technology has improved. Like now you're being told about this machine has been made this small. So as we're going on, flying is becoming simpler and simpler because of automation. My prayer is that as we're going on in Kenya, any Tom, Dick, or Harry can be a pilot because we make it easy for you and cheap. It's not, I don't want you to go to the old days where in 1960 where you had to join the Air Force with an A to join become a pilot. That is how our parents look at it. So the concept, I want to create this concept. It's easy being a pilot. It's not a big deal. And so we wanted to make it easy and at the same time cheap. So that's what I've really been working on for the last 4 years to remove that concept. It's a rich man's or I'm like a small god. No, I believe you can and he can. So that is my concept that's my concept of flying. I don't know how you look at it, but it's that way. So don't forget, it's only the Ministry of Transport that gives licenses. So under the Ministry of Transport, KCAA, Kenya Civil Aviation Authority, gives flying licenses. NTSA, National Transport Safety Authority Board, gives road licenses. Then you have got the Marine, something, I'm forgetting the name in Mombasa, that gives sailors licenses. For yacht, boat, you have a license to go on your yacht or your boat. There's a license for that. Then they all put that under the Ministry of Transport, and they're all licenses. So a license and a degree are two different things. And this license is not, it's just a skill that you require to do. So one of the things is now to separate the degree and license as two separate things. So I tell people I have a license in flying, which is not a big deal. Like you have a driver's license. So hopefully you can get a flying license. And maybe you may be rich enough, you have your yacht, you can have a sailor's license. What's the big deal?
I guess it's just the mentality.
And that's the mentality I'm saying we need to change. We need to change that mentality. So this mentality is bad. Let's think like rich people maybe, but it's not rich, it's normal. But it's these laws that we have to say these are the laws here, but let's make it easy for you. I don't really need that question.
Okay, I want to let us come from that concept. I want to ask you a question. When you were in that piloting, when you were flying the flight, has ever something happened funniest in when you were flying, when you were in the plane? Anything happened funny?
Like almost something near death. No, okay, let me say something that when I did my flights, and especially the places I enjoyed a lot doing my flights was in South Africa. The concept was very different because when you enter the flying school, I was in a school called Flight Training College, and Flight Training College had a very different concept, even for the student pilots at that time. So I remember that I would go to the flying school with popcorn and Coca-Cola, and would enter the aeroplane, and my teacher would tell me, don't forget, every flight is fun. You're supposed to enjoy the flight. So sometimes you'd get into turbulence and almost feel like you're going to die and all that. But I always found it as fun. Yes, we had strict teachers and all that, but the flying was fun. So one time you can feel like you're about to die because you're in a bad weather and everything. But to me, it was also an adventure. So I can't say there was any really, in my viewpoint, anything that I got really scared. Once in a while, like almost felt like I was going to die, but I really had fun. Yeah, so there were 3 occasions, and it because I've been a flying instructor. So one time I felt a student wanted to kill me twice, and then one time I went in bad weather, and I think it was just 3-4 times. But otherwise, I've been good. Yeah.
No, I guess.
Okay, our last small question. What advice can you give to young aspiring pilots?
Well, I don't know. I don't want to be a pessimist. My friends have been telling me I'm a pessimist for a long time. I'll tell them one, to be very honest. There are no jobs. Let's get that out of the way. And I'd like to be honest on that one. Because the flying can cost you between 7-8 million. Kenya shillings currently, not less than 7-8 million. So if you're going to spend that, make sure you have contacts in the flying industry. So most of the guys who go into flying are kids from pilots or kids, someone in Kenya Airways or something who can push you. Those are just the facts. So if you're going to go into flying, yes, have the 7-8 million that you can spend in about 2-3 years. So you've got like that bag you can spend in 2-3 years. It's expensive. That's one. Then number two, when you finish, make sure someone can push and get a job for you. So names may go to 8, 10 M in 2 years. Make sure you don't go above 2.5 years. So you have the money, you make sure you do it in a span of 2.5 years, and you have contacts to get you a job. That's that. If you want to do flying for free, please join the Air Force. There is no way they're going to give you a scholarship. There are no scholarships for flying ever. Why? One scholarship for a pilot can school 7 doctors. So in Africa, what do we need? Doctors or pilots?
Doctor.
So if I've got money, let me give scholarships to 7 doctors and giving scholarship to 1 pilot who will not even get a job. These are facts. So when I talk that way, parents say I'm a pessimist and all that stuff. And I would say the last thing, if you're rich enough, fly for fun. Join it and fly for fun. But I wouldn't want to spend that amount of money and then not get a job. It can really discourage your parent and yourself. So that's a concept that is there. You go in, and if you find that you get the job, I'm happy. But I don't want to be a pessimist and say you'll not get a job. You may get a job. But if you don't, then you can do something else. You can do piloting and a doctor, piloting and engineering. But if you get a job, I'm happy for you. So don't have the concept of that it's going to be a walk in the park, because there are very few jobs, especially now in Kenya, because KQ has not expanded.
All right, our viewers who are listening abroad, watching us from, remember, the word here it's made. You go to school to acquire knowledge, not to acquire job. Underline that. So the young Gen Zs and young people out there, remember one key point is what? Knowledge. We have come to the end of our show, that is Know Your Guest. Here in our studio, we had William, who is a pilot and engineer, who has told us more about his journey. I was your host, John Teddy.
And I'm your favorite co-host, Elma.
Let's meet next time. Remember to follow all our social media platforms. That is Newsline Media TV. We love you so much.
Are you ready to kickstart your creativity career in the media world? At NewsLine Media Agency, we give you an opportunity to bridge your creative ideas and bring them into the real world, working on real growth with real projects and mentors. Our programs are guided by industry experts, sharpening your skills to bring out the creativity in your mind. Join our team, working on exciting projects and gain skills that stands out in this fast-paced media industry. Applications are now open. Visit our website at www.newsline.co.ke or call us on 0720 9333 50, or you can visit our offices located at Thika Town Zuhura building opposite Coconut Grill Hotel. NewsLine Media Agency, your home for all media attachments.